Will everyone please join me in Gato and repeat the Nembutsu with me? Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo. Good morning. I hope everyone is doing well during this rainy day, this rainy Sunday. Today, I would once again like to come back to the topic of the three treasures. The Dharma School students who are present, the three treasures are the, louder please, the Buddha, yes, okay. The second one is the Dharma, very good. And the third one is the Sangha, very good. And which treasure are we on right now? Dharma, very good. You're still on Dharma. So for the months of March and April, we are on the subject of Dharma. So I talked about Dharma as the great teaching, right? The teaching that the Buddha, that the Buddha gave us. But the Dharma can also mean many other things as well. Dharma can mean rule or law, right? Law. And today I would like to talk a little bit about the Dharma as law. And this is interesting because when we talk about the Dharma, when we think about laws, right, we usually think of something that politicians do, right? They kind of vote on it, or when someone breaks the law, they go to jail, right? But when we talk about dharmic law, right, we're talking about something that's actually much deeper than the laws that we create as a society of people. Okay. When we talk about Dharma as law, this was the Buddha merely explaining the true reality that we live in, the true reality of our existence, the true reality that we all, in a sense, live by. And of course, Reverend Takashi Miyagi actually talked about this in one of his podcasts, and I want to cite him and make sure that I am giving proper credit to where credit is due. But I really like this example. So, if I were, this is a little microphone cover, it always seems to come off, but if I were to drop this, if I were to let go of this, of this microphone cover, what would happen? It would what? It would fall, right? Are you sure? You sure it wouldn't float? Are you sure that it would just stay in midair? It would just stay in midair? Let's find out. Right? Who thought that it would actually float? Nobody. Okay, good. So Dharma, right, is like essentially gravity, right? It's not just like gravity, but a good example is gravity, right? Can we physically see gravity? I mean, we have a book here, right? You can all see the book. I'm touching this book. Can we all see this, right? But can we see gravity? No. Do we know that it's there? Yes. Because if gravity weren't here, what would happen? We would kind of float up and probably drift into space. But gravity is here, nonetheless. Gravity is a real thing, right? That's the same as the Dharma. The Dharma is like true reality. It is something that basically that we cannot see. It is not something that we can probably grasp or touch with our hands. But at the same time, it's ultimate reality. But let's talk about Dharma as law as well, right? The actions that we take, the things that we do, the choices that we make. And if we're going to talk about this idea of Dharma as law, I would like to once again revisit the story of the thief Angulimala. How many of you remember that story when I told it from a while back? Just to give you a brief recap, okay, do you remember there was that evil thief? Well, I couldn't say evil, but the Angulimala who was doing very good things, right? He would rob people. He probably killed many people. He was very feared, and anybody who came into contact with him, probably didn't live to tell the tale. But he had a very bad reputation. And remember the story of when Angulimala thought he was going to rob or kill the Buddha. And as far as, or as much as he tried to run after the Buddha kept getting further and further away. And so finally, when the Buddha came and spake on Angulimala and basically said, I have not been moving at all, the harder you run from reality, the further you go away from it. And so Angulimala was so moved by the Buddha, he became a disciple. Now, Angulimala became a monk, started practicing liturgy, started doing, all the general practices that disciples of the Buddha were expected to do. Now, this is a continuation of the story. Angulimala went to one village to beg for alms, right, or was begging, right? That's part of the practice of the traditional monks. And then one of the villagers noticed something about this monk, and they said, "Hey, you look familiar." And then all of a sudden, the alarm bell started to ring, and everyone said, "It's Angulimala. He came and robbed with a bunch of his friends. They came and robbed our village. How dare he come into this village, right?" So they all started to kind of throw rocks at him, and they kind of chased him out of the village. And again, this was something that this is a disciple of the Buddha. Who would do this to such a person? So Angulimala returned to the Buddha, and he told him what had happened, right? Now, of course, we generally expect, right, the Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, to go to the village and kind of scold them, right, and say, how dare you do such a horrible thing to one of my disciples? But after the Buddha listened to Angulimala's story, he sat Angulimala down and he said, "Remember, Angulimala, even though you are a disciple of mine, and as much as you have changed, as much as you have progressed in your study of Buddhism, you still committed terrible treacheries and horrible deeds in the past. And you can't necessarily erase those things. There are still people who view you as your past self." Now, of course, the Buddha didn't condone or say what the villagers did was good, but presented it to Angulimala as a form of reality, that our decisions, the way we treat people, the consequences that come with that. It's entirely possible that in times past, right, we have done things that we are not proud of, or that we have gotten mad, or we might have yelled at a person, or that we might have, gotten into an argument. But, and of course, the next day or a few weeks down the line, or maybe even years later, we think, we bettered ourselves, we've improved ourselves, we have, probably gone to anger management counseling, we have, been able to, made ourselves a better person. However, the past doesn't necessarily just disappear, right? The first impression a person has on another person might still stick. And when we go back to a certain situation, or when we meet a person again from our distant past, they may only associate us with that past. Now, we as Buddhists, of course, very much emphasize not clinging to the past, right? Not holding on to it, not holding grudges. But at the same time, we also have to own up, and we also have to acknowledge and sometimes confront our past mistakes as well. This is the Dharma as law, that every action, right, sometimes has a consequence. That there isn't always, just because we claim to be Buddhist or we practice Buddhist practices or we read the Buddhist teachings, doesn't always absolve us of the past transgressions that we have done in the past. And this is the sort of true story that Shakyamuni Buddha has said to Angulimala, right? That even though we can better ourselves for the tomorrow, and we should always continue to better ourselves, deeply listen to the Dharma, and be able to improve who we are. Sometimes we have to also confront our past mistakes. This is the story of Angulimala's, confronting of his past transgression. This isn't to say again that, don't do anything or, only do kind things. We're human. We're going to make mistakes, and sometimes we're going to get into arguments. But in the future, we can also deeply listen to sometimes the mistakes that we have made in the past, and also acknowledge them as well and own up to them. Sadly, when we see celebrities sometimes in the media and, seeing some of the not very nice things that they say sometimes, right? They try to either justify what they said, or they dig their feet in deeper into the sand and refuse to budge. But what Buddhism teaches us is that we are not always right, and that we can always have room for improvement. So the first thing, of course, is always, that Angulimala had to do was acknowledge that he did past transgressions, right? He did past transgressions, but he did better himself as well. These are things that we have to kind of tackle every single day as Buddhists, right? Being Buddhist doesn't automatically make us a saint. Right? Being Christian doesn't automatically make us a saint, right? All of the religious title that we affiliate ourselves with doesn't automatically make us good or, are moral necessarily, or don't always act that way. We sometimes submit to our anger, and sometimes we are drowned in our ignorance, but we can continue to receive the messages from our founders, like Koyama and the other masters before him, as well as the message of Shakyamuni Buddha's lesson on Amida Buddha's infinite wisdom and compassion. And this leads us to, finally, the idea of infinite wisdom and compassion. Now, people, right? People sometimes can be narrow, can have a narrow vision of things and will probably hold grudges. But the ultimate thing is that Amida Buddha's wisdom and compassion continues to work for our benefit. Even though we may have, done some mistakes in the past, or have or sometimes, have gotten into arguments, Amida Buddha's wisdom and compassion will still continue to work for us. Because of our past mistakes, in fact, and because we are not perfect, Amida Buddha's wisdom and compassion continues to work for our benefit. This is something that is very important for us to remember. That yes, we do need to confront and own up and apologize and say, I'm sorry for our past mistakes. But in the end as well, the working of the vow will continue to work for us. That will always be a constant. That will never cease. Now, for the meme, like, go out and do whatever you want to do, you should always continue to improve yourself. But at the very end of it, Amida Buddha's wisdom and compassion will always be there. Will always be with you constantly, with open arms and love and constant caring and constant giving of knowledge and compassion for us until our dying days. So with that, I would like to thank all of you for joining us on this rainy Sunday, and to continue once again to learn of the Dharma as law. Please join me in that. And repeat the members with me. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. To reveal the true teaching, it is the larger sutra of the Buddha of immeasurable life. The central purport of this sutra is that Amida, by establishing the incomparable vows, has opened wide the Dharma storehouse, and full of compassion for small foolish beings, selects and bestows the treasured virtues. Namo Amida. Namo Amida. Namo. Good morning. We had a very successful class. Nearly 30 people attended, and I taught these the folks who attended my method on cooking chicken karaage and potato salad. And it was a wonderful class. And it made me realize, it just, the food and the comfort, it's so much better when it's multiple people working together, having a wonderful time, cooking. And, I usually love to cook by myself and love to make the meals. And I'm kind of a control freak in the kitchen, I think. But regardless, it was still a wonderful experience. I was so happy to see many people, and I was the food within the company were wonderful. I hope to do another cooking class in the future. So thank you all to those who attended, and apologies for those of you who were not able to attend. There really aren't any leftovers for you to enjoy. But regardless, I certainly hope I will be able to do another cooking class soon. So talking today about the Dharma and what Shinran Shonin has gifted to us out of the teaching. In this particular passage, this is the passage on the teaching of the Pure Land Way. So we talked about the Dharma as teaching, or as the great teaching. And for us as Kyoto Shinto Buddhists, this teaching comes from the larger sutra. And the main reason that Shinran states this, and especially for us, is because in this sutra, Amida Buddha, or at the time Bodhisattva Dharmakara, established the 48 vows purely for our benefit as unenlightened beings. And in this vow, he discriminates no one. And he says that all sentient beings of the 10 directions who wish to be born in my land need only say my name and hold fast to my name even 10 times. And if they are not born in my land, they are not become a Buddha. So this actually talks about the character and the nature of who, Amida Buddha is, right? The ever consistent working of wisdom and compassion, purely for our benefit. We as people can do great things. We have done great things. We have gone to the moon. We have, achieved space travel. We are living longer and healthier, in our history because of the advances in medical science. All of us are in this, we live in what we consider to be the modern age. We have smartphones constantly, or we have smartphones with us. Information is actually just a smartphone away now. I'm certain some of you, and even including myself, remember the time where you actually had to reference the dictionary in order to get the answers that you wanted, right? My father, when he would make me do my reading assignments for homework in school, would force me to read my assignment with the dictionary. And if I didn't know what a word meant, he'd say, what is that? He would ask me, if the card came up, he goes, what does that word mean? And if I told him I didn't know, he would say, look it up in the dictionary. He would help me find it. And then we would talk about the word. So, hard work. But now, all you need to do is think smart. What does this really mean? Boom, there it is. So we have come a long way, and yet we are still afflicted with the human condition that was talked about all those millennia ago, 2,000 or 2,500 years ago. We are still afflicted with greed, anger, and ignorance. We as people we still want things. I still want things. Even before service, I was sort of thinking about what am I going to do for lunch today, or what am I going to do for dinner? Oh gosh, I'm going to be going to California in a few days. I'm going to be flying down. I hope I'm not next to a person who snores, or I'm thinking all of these things, which shows how unenlightened I am. And yet, because of my unenlightened self, Amida Buddha's word, wisdom, and compassion continues to work for my behalf. Work for my benefit. And I think this is something that we as Buddhists have to, once again, come into contact with, is that we ourselves, right, as much as we may do great things, and as, we could give thousands upon thousands to charity, we can, invent a cure for cancer. Yet still, there doesn't seem to be a cure, at least from our end, from our unenlightened selves, for enlightenment, right? Or for our nature of the three poisons, for our three poisons. There doesn't seem to be a cure that we have been able to concoct yet that cures us of that. Yet, Shakyamuni Buddha was able to cure himself of that. And Amida Buddha gives us constant wisdom and compassion from his pure nature of the three poisons. This is why the larger sutra is so important for us, is because it is a teaching that we can kind of lean upon. Now, I don't want to say cling to, right, because we want to be careful about that, but it's a teaching that we can lean upon. It's a teaching that we can take comfort in, knowing that because of our imperfect selves, there is a Buddha working for our pure benefit, working for our enlightenment and our liberation from this world of samsara. I was thinking about how, sometimes it seems that when we do good deeds, we want acknowledgement for them, correct? It's like we want to get acknowledgement for the good things that I did. And of course, we as people and as a society, give wonderful acknowledgements and monuments to people who have done great things, right? We go to Washington, D.C., and we see the Washington Monument, and then there's the Lincoln Memorial. There's all of these statues and plaques and memorials for, great historical figures. But at the same time, right, when we talk about, the great deeds and the great advances that these people have helped with our society, I think it's also important for us to acknowledge the everlasting working of the Dharma and of many messengers who have brought us here today. This is why we have the Almighty, decorated, or I should say adorned the way we do, with Amida Buddha in the center, representing wisdom and compassion. Sometimes people actually say, like when they look at Amida Buddha, you have to distinguish that he is not the historical Buddha from, the time in India, but he was talked about by the historical Buddha. And then on top of that, sometimes we, again, we acknowledge that what we see in the center there is a statue, for sure. But it is something that we can see. Remember how I was talking about in the previous Dharma talk about how we can't see gravity, right? We can't see gravity, nor can we see light, right? We can't actually see light in its pure form. We see reflections of it. We see, if you threw dust in the air, right, you can see the reflection of the light beam coming through the room. But light as it is, right, we cannot see. All we see is its reflection. The same thing with gravity. We feel its effect. When I dropped the microphone, and thank you, Jet, for putting it back on, but when I dropped it, it fell. We can clearly see that. The same thing is true with the statue, right? And the sixth character of Namo Amidavasi. These are things that we can see. And how grateful are we that we can see them? Because if we didn't have them here, right? If we didn't have it, then we wouldn't be able to see. We wouldn't be able to grasp. And the same thing is true with the other schools, right? Shinran, Daniel, Prince Shotoku, and the Seven Masters. Did they really look like that? I'm not sure, actually. We see many statues of Shinran Shonin, but during Shinran Shonin's time, even there weren't photographs, right? There was only paintings of them. And the same thing is true with the Seven Masters. With the Seven Masters, there weren't photographs. With Prince Shotoku, there weren't photographs. All we have is a reflection of what we can see. So, again, with the Dharma and the largest sutra being explained to us by Shakyamuni Buddha, it's hard for us to imagine this. It's hard for us to kind of fathom the great concept that is wisdom and compassion, that is Amida Buddha. So therefore, we have these statues to help remind us of the wisdom and compassion of the working of that Buddha. If we get into sort of complicated territory with this, but again, what we have to remember is that the statues, the scrolls, the sixth character of Namo Amidavasi, all of it is for our benefit and our benefit alone. This isn't for us to, this isn't for us to basically take for granted and necessarily, pick apart and try to analyze in some senses. But for us, really, it is for us to be reminded of the constant working of the Nembutsu, the constant working of the power that is Amida Buddha's wisdom and compassion. When we come into this Hondo space every day or every Sunday, right, and we see the beautiful images here, we are once again reminded of that working. On a regular day-to-day basis, it can be easy to forget, or it can be easy to not think about it. It can be easy to just go through the day based on a schedule or a routine. But with Amida Buddha's wisdom and compassion, we are reminded when we come to the temple, or when we say Namo Amida Butsu. And for the record, we don't need to be inside the temple walls to say Namo Amida Butsu. When there is a great understanding or some type of aha moment we experience outside, we realize of the forces and the outside influences that have come together to help us with this realization. That is when we say Namo Amida Butsu. And we once again realize that this is Amida Buddha's working purely for our benefit. It's not to say that we are blessed or that we are, to make wishes and petitionary prayers. The Dharma continues to work for our benefit, whether we see it or not. And this is the wisdom and compassion that we experience on a daily basis. This isn't like you say Namo Amida Butsu enough times, and you're gonna win the lottery, or you're gonna get the car that you always wanted. This is, I realize now, or I can feel this constant wisdom and compassion that is coming towards me from the pure. And this is given freely to everyone. And this should always be remembered. As for, the true teaching, right? The true teaching of Shakyamuni Buddha, that is the largest sutra that Shakyamuni Buddha preached to us all those many years ago. And it is for our benefit that we see Amida Buddha, that we see the statue, that we bring our hands together and say, Namo Amida Butsu. I would like to thank you all very much for coming and being with us during this rainy weather. In closing, will you please join me in God's. To reveal the true teaching, it is the largest sutra of the Buddha of immeasurable light. The central purport of this sutra is that Amida, by establishing the incomparable vows, has opened wide the Dharma storehouse, and full of compassion for small, foolish beings, selects and bestows the treasure of virtues. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu.